Hey there, I'm Alyson Stanfield, and this is the Art Biz. I think I'm known as a truth teller. I prefer to get to the point and say it like it is rather than pussyfoot around a topic. I might dance a little bit. I try to be diplomatic, but I'm not necessarily going to tell you what you want to hear. So you are in the right place if you want to hear the truth about your art business and career. And the truth I want to talk about today is time, as in how much time will your art career take? I'm going to give you some numbers that you might find hard to swallow, not because I want to discourage you, but because I want you to have a clear sense of what's involved. How much time should you spend on the business side? And how long before any of it pays off? These are two different levels of questions. There's your daily time and the longer stretch it takes to establish yourself. Both of these matter and both deserve a true, straight answer. So let's get to it. The older we get, the more precious time becomes. I don't have to tell you this. We got advertisers interrupting us. We got tech breaking down. We've got everything competing for this precious time that we have. And yet we can do nothing to control time. That darn rude clock keeps ticking without any regard for our agenda. So I'm not surprised when I'm asked, how much time are those lessons going to take? Or, as I mentioned, how much time should I spend on marketing versus making art? Or how much time is it going to take for all of this to pay off? Everyone wants to know how much time, because time is sacred. It's a finite resource. You should be choosy about how you spend your time. In fact, it might be worth a minute for us to consider that turn of phrase, spending time. Because the word spending is often associated with money. We are paying for something. We're turning over cash or charging a credit card for goods and services. We are spending money. And when we spend time, we are paying with our attention. We have a limited budget of time, and we are in control over how we spend it. So while you can't manage time, you can manage yourself and decide how you will spend your limited time. But there's a better question. Instead of asking how much time, the better question to ask is, how much time and effort am I willing to spend on this? That's the key word, willing. When you are committed, you do not care how much time something takes. You'll find a way to get it done because it becomes a priority. It bumps up on your list. When you're committed, you lose track of time because you're focused on reaching the goal. This is something I addressed back in episode 214, which also lays out my bias for action and against waiting for the right time because we don't have time to wait. So for example, let's just lay this out. If you say commit with your whole heart to a goal of preparing 15 new pieces for a collection release on September 22nd, you're going to find a way to do it. I'm not saying this is something you need to do, and I'm not going to tell you how to spend your time. Only you can decide if, for example, one of my on-demand workshops is something that you're willing to spend time on, something that could help you improve your results from that collection release. Because just paying for a workshop and never doing the work is a sure way to waste this irreplaceable commodity. I don't want you to do that. When I work with clients, I am not only providing strategic consulting, I'm using coaching techniques to help them understand their specific vision and the built-in limitations of their life and current situation. To help them understand that their goals, their lofty, wonderful goals, might conflict with what they're willing to do, or in some cases, what they're physically or energetically able to do. You have to acknowledge all of this while you are making plans for the future and while you're planning your schedule for tomorrow or next week. You have to take it all into account holistically. So as you make decisions on how you spend your time, it pays to be realistic. So we're going to do a little math, maybe a first on this program. Let's use that collection release as an example. At the time of this podcast release, there are 111 days until September 22nd. So it's summer here in the Northern Hemisphere, and I want you to enjoy it. But I also know that the next busy art season is going to be here before you know it. I don't want you waking up in September, having allowed your email list to grow cold, or realizing that your calendar is quite empty. Yeah, you've got that collection release though. So how are you going to move forward if you haven't planned how this is going to happen? How are you going to earn money? How are you going to make those sales with that collection release that you have worked on so hard throughout the summer? You have to figure out how are you going to spend these 111 days. How much time is going to be devoted to the collection release, to actually making in the studio? And then how much is going to be set aside for other things, or has to be set aside? 111 days equals 16 weeks or 2,664 hours. If you sleep 8 hours a night, you're left with 1,776 hours, which sounds like a lot. But you probably have a daily routine. Maybe it's not defined, but you exercise, you read, you write, you eat, you run errands. I'm guessing that's 5 hours a day. That leaves you with 1,221 hours, or about 11 hours a day, 7 days a week, to fit everything outside of your life routine into your schedule: your art, your business, your extra recreation, your cleaning, your travel. And you probably don't want to work 11 hours a day, 7 days a week, so you have to take that into account. One exercise that you can do right now is to add up the time for all of your currently scheduled commitments. The week I'm recording this, I had 23 hours of scheduled appointments. That included my startup and shutdown rituals, which I set aside on my calendar for myself. But 23 hours, 2 days right out of my schedule. What I've learned is that any task or a full-blown project is going to take as much time as you allow. And how much you allow is something in your control. So here's that question again. How much time and effort are you willing to invest? I promised I would answer those two questions about how much time, and I'm going to do that right now. Let's start with your daily routine. It has to be said that this is going to vary greatly depending on where you are in your business and career and where you are in the rhythm of your life. If you are serious about your career goals or making a business from your art, meaning you are aiming for profit and increased income, and I'm not saying that you should, but if you are, you're going to spend an average of at least 50% of your time on business and marketing. That means if you have a 40-hour work week, that's 8 hours a day, 5 days a week instead of 11 hours a day, you spend 20 of those hours on business. If you only have 10 hours, you have, for instance, an outside job, you spend 5 hours on business. Again, I told you, you might not like what I had to tell you. 50% of your time, but this is going to vary greatly. Sometimes we have to spend all of our time getting a body of work together. But I'm only going to give you 90% of that time because I always want you to be working on your business. I don't want you to wake up in September to a cold list, to people that haven't heard from you in so long, and you having to reintroduce yourself, act like you care about these people, and ask them to buy something. You've got to be doing some business along the way. Then when that collection release comes along in September, you might be spending more like 90% of your time on marketing because the work's already made. So it might even out, but it's probably going to be at least 50% of your time on business. And that means everything outside of making the work. That means the packing and shipping, the doing your inventory, updating your list, writing a newsletter, all of that stuff. 50% of your time. And contrary to what you might believe, more sales and more recognition do not lead to less office time. In fact, the opposite is true, because the more successful you are, the more demands there are on you, the more time you're going to have to spend on business, because you are answering to your team members, to galleries, museums, and collectors. You are managing people, tracking deadlines, following up with opportunities. All kinds of logistics are involved. Yeah, you're going to have more people to help you with your obligations, and you're going to have to manage them. That takes your time as well. So you have to be realistic about time requirements when you make the commitment. You have to know how you want to spend your time when you want a rewarding art business and career. In your daily routine, you can plan on spending an average of 50% of your time, at least, on the business stuff. The daily time you devote to your art and business adds up. It all counts toward the bigger thing that you're building. Results can happen quickly or they can take longer. Every artist's path is different though, and in general, you're looking at years rather than months. Years of steady work. It always makes me so nervous when someone quits a job or is laid off and says, I got to make money right away, because that's just not how things usually work. It takes long stretches of honing your work, meeting new people, nurturing those relationships, growing your audience, articulating your ideas. Nothing is a single transaction or action. One thing at a time, and showing up repeatedly for yourself and your work. Some people are going to catch a big break when a post goes viral, or a critic raves about their work, or a curator seems to pick your work out of thin air. These are the exceptions. Most of us put in the hours without much reward for years because we're committed. And I know how frustrating it is to work and see few results. But you have to know that you're making progress, even when it feels like you're standing still, even when it feels like you're going backwards, or like nobody's watching or nobody's getting you, especially then. You just have to remember, you're not doing it for them. You're doing it because you have something to say. And the only way to build an audience is to show up in the studio and office every day. Remember that when you are committed, you'll make the time. So before you worry about how much time anything takes, check that the commitment is there. The time you need will follow from that, not the other way around. That's it for this episode of The Art Biz. Thanks so much for tuning in. If you want to read the show notes for this, go to artbizpodcast.com and look for episode number 267. And while you're there, click on the new topics button, where you will find 13, count them, 13 topics categories, everything from the podcast episodes and posts that I most recommend, to posts about email marketing, to networking and venues, etc. So check that out. It's all at artbizpodcast.com, and look for the topics tab.